Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. In the interest of time and not to lose interpretation by the end of this session, I will propose you to begin our third day. The orient as for today, I would like to begin with an outline of the plan for today. First, I would like to invite the co-chairs of the three contact groups on Annexes A and B, on Mercury waste threshold and on budget to update us the work and progress of their group. Then, I will invite the facilitators of the Friends of the President groups on reporting on the effectiveness evaluation to do the same. After that, we will move into the substantive items for today, namely, we will reopen agenda item 4H, capacity building, technical assistance and technology transfer, with the aim to complete its consideration. Please note that CRP3, containing the revised draft decision text for this agenda item, is available in the In-Session tab of the COP5 website. And then we will open consideration of items 4E, releases. We did not have time to consider yesterday. And this will be followed by agenda item 4M, gender, 4N, knowledge management, and 4O, Mercury and Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We will conclude this morning's session with agenda item 5, international cooperation and coordination. This afternoon, the agenda item on financial mechanism will be reopened to consider adoption of the CRP on the matter. Then we may continue with the consideration of agenda item 4. I trust this overview of the morning session is clear to you. In the afternoon, we will turn our attention to the remaining technical items. Good. Before I proceed to call on the co-chairs, let me also inform you that document UNEP/MC/COP5/CRP5 information on the economic and technical feasibility on mercury-free catalyst on VCM production submitted by the United States and Norway has been posted on the website last night. Now, I would like to invite the co-chair of the contact group on Annexes A and B to report on the work of the group and the progress made. Itsuki Kuroda and Juliette Petlain, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I am pleased to report on the work made in the contact group on Annex A and B on behalf of myself and my co-chair. The contact group met from 10:30 a.m. to 12:45 p.m. yesterday. In accordance with the mandate given by Plenary related to establishing whether mercury-free alternatives for the production of vinyl chloride monomer and sodium or potassium methylate or ethylate have been technically and economically feasible. The group agreed that mercury-free alternatives for the production of sodium or potassium methylate or ethylate have become technically and economically feasible, while one party could not agree at this stage for the production of VCM. The group also considered the proposal to amend Parts Part 1 and 2 of Annex A with respect to dental amalgam. On this proposal, the group delved into discussion on the measures relating to dental amalgam in Part 2 of Annex A. There were divergent views on various elements of the proposal, with some parties stating that they could not support a phase-out, but could consider a phase-down. There were suggestions that parties develop and submit national plans in relation to the phase-out of dental amalgam, while some parties proposed that national reporting under Article 21 could be a preferred alternative. and various suggestions were made on the period of reporting. Although the discussion was productive in terms of elaborating positions and views, there was little convergence. It is apparent that more work is needed. Therefore, Madam President, while my co-chair and I acknowledge the progress made by the group, we recognize that more time is needed to finalize outstanding items mandated to this group. And we would request that the President allocate a further session to enable this work. We are in your hands as to when that might be. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Juliet. I've noticed that you have further progressed on the work, but I understand more time is needed to complete your task. So, in this regard, I request the contact group to convene now and work until 1:30 in room A, and then meet again in the evening from 7 to 10 to complete the work and report on the outcome on the contact group tomorrow. It is extremely important that you are able to finalize so we can proceed with the program we have for the week in a timely manner. Thank you once again. I now move on and invite the co-chair of the contact group on Mercury waste threshold to report on the work of the group and the progress made. Zaigam Abbas and Carissa Kovner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning. The contact group on mercury waste threshold met yesterday from 7 to 10 p.m. Ms. Carissa, co-chair, and I am happy to report that group made a very good start. As mandated by the plenary, the group discussed the elements of COP decision on mercury waste threshold. The group started with considering the guidance document on leach test method for mine tailing, on which there was no disagreement. We were happy to start on a positive note. Then the group discussed matter related to the relationship with the Basel Convention. There was a general support to recognize the relevance of the relationship with the Basel Convention, including transmitting the COP decision to Basel COP. And the group will further consider issues of legal clarity in relation to transboundary movement of mercury waste. Then the group discussed the alternate proposals approach that party could take in lieu of threshold for waste contaminated with mercury to be established by the COP. We heard the majority of views supporting this provision, recognizing that while there was a desire to reach agreement on a single agreed threshold, that has proven to be very difficult, we sense a cooperative and flexible spirit toward the agreement on this provision. Lastly, the group started to consider the specific threshold value. Divergent views were expressed on the proposed values of 10, 15, and 25 milligram per kg. Parties initially supported 25 milligram per kg and showed a compromising spirit to accept the removal of 25 milligram per kg. We do, however, have two parties expressing concern that we have not yet found a scientifically based threshold. We will need more time, Madam President, to further discuss this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zaigam. I understand you have also progressed. However, the work needs to continue to further advance. So in this regard, I request the contact group to work in the afternoon from 3 to 6 and report on the progress tomorrow morning. Thank you very much. I now invite the co-chair of the contact group on budget to report on the work of the group made and the progress made. I'm inviting Premzil Stepanek from Czech Republic to present you the report. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and good morning, colleagues. I'm reporting also on behalf of my co-chair, Maria del Mar Solano Trejos. The contact group on program of work and budget met for the first time yesterday from 1 to 4:50 p.m. The co-chairs presented the mandate of the group and proposed how the group should proceed. We also heard the introductory presentation of the Secretariat. The group agreed to base its deliberations of the budget table on the 5% scenario. We also did the first reading of the draft decision text as well as the first reading of the program of work activities. Some paragraphs and the budget activities still need to be discussed in the second reading. The co-chairs appreciated the constructive spirit of collaboration in the contact group. As promised yesterday, the Secretariat uploaded the current version of the draft decision text and program of work activities for 24 and 25 on the COP's intranet site. The plan, well, as we supposed, we would have a meeting today, so the plan for today's budget contact group meeting would be to undertake the second reading of the outstanding paragraphs in the draft decision text and of the outstanding program of work activities. Also, as needed, we would clear any decisions from the budgetary perspective if received from the other contact groups or plenary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premzil. I request you to continue the work during the lunch period from 1 to 3. And then you also have a time slot available from as soon as the afternoon plenary adjourns until 10 p.m. I leave it at the discretion of you and your co-chair to decide when to stop today based on the progress achieved. I will hear about the progress of your group tomorrow morning. Thank you very much. Moving now I would like to invite the facilitators of the Friends of the President group on reporting to report on the work of the group and the progress made. Paulina Riquelme and Annika Bedouin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to report on behalf of my co-facilitator, Annick. The Friends met yesterday afternoon between 4:30 and 6:30 and was able to conclude its work, noting that 12 parties were represented, including Saudi Arabia, Canada, Poland, the United States, the EU, Netherlands, Finland, Austria, Switzerland, Japan, and China. The co-facilitators remind the group that the mandate from the President limited the scope of the group works to propose amendments to the reporting format and to the draft reporting guidance and the draft decision on reporting, and explained that the suggestions should be with a view to increase clarity for reporting parties. The Friends started by addressing the participant-specific comments to the proposed amendments to the reporting format. The participants identified their various concerns and the basis for them, and the group considered consequent changes in wording, including on questions 3.3, 4.3, 17.1, 18.1, and 19.1. All issues raised were dealt with in a collegiate manner. The Friends then addressed the proposed amendments to the draft reporting guidance and agreed on targeted changes to improve the clarity and relevance of the guidance in relation to several questions. Finally, the group considered the draft decision that had been included in document 5/15. The group proposed to delete the final phrase in paragraph 4 to insert an "and" at the end of paragraph 7 and confirm the understanding in plenary regarding the deletion of footnotes. The outcome of this work will be presented in a CRP for the consideration of the plenary. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Paulina. This is indeed a very good news. I thank the facilitators and participating parties for completing your task efficiently and in a timely manner. The outcome of your work will be coming back to plenary at the appropriate time. Thank you once again. I now move on and invite the facilitator of the Friends of the President Group on Effectiveness Evaluation to report on the work of the group and progress made. Leroy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As per your request, the Friends of President on Effectiveness Evaluation met between 7 and 8:30. And as per your mandate, the Friends focused only on the question of the Effectiveness Evaluation Group membership and the numbers of the members per region. There was a general consensus on the importance of the evaluation process and the need to establish the grouping. The parties demonstrated a great degree of flexibility and worked in a spirit of compromise. During our discussions, there was a point of convergence that was recognized by members in the room as we moved from the extremes of 3 members and 8 members of the group. Some parties did indicate that they wished to consult with Capital, and based on extensive discussions and the feedback, we allowed for that to happen yesterday, and we're hoping that today we get back to the point of convergence that we seem to be nearing. I wouldn't say the number at this juncture, but certainly there is, again, a great spirit of compromise in the room, and we hope that with some further discussions, we would be able to arrive at what would be an acceptable membership for all parties concerned. There was also the general consensus that the funding from the core budget would be best for effectiveness evaluation as a core function of the Conference of the Parties, and therefore, bearing that in mind, it would also influence the membership of the group. So we are kindly requesting further discussions today, and we take leave to get instructions from you as to when this will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leroy. I heard that you had fruitful discussions, and however, a little bit more time is needed to finalize them. So in this regard, I request the Friends of President Group to meet today from 1:30 to 2:30, so for 1 hour, to conclude the work and report to me. Thank you very much. Okay, so dear delegates, much progress has been achieved already, and we need to keep up the good work. We have many agenda items still open, and it is crucial we finalize the work in the groups. Before proceeding with the next agenda item, I would like the Secretariat to inform on the rooms for the contact groups.
Thank you. The contact group on Annexes A and B will meet now until 13:30 in Room A, and again from 1900 to 2200, again in Room A. The contact group on waste thresholds will meet from 1500 to 1800 in Room A. The Program of Work and Budget contact group will meet from 1300 to 1500 in Room 4, and will reconvene as soon as the afternoon plenary session is adjourned until 2200 hours as needed. Finally, the Friends of the President group on effectiveness evaluation will meet from 13:30 until 14:30 in Room 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Let's now turn back to agenda item 4H, capacity building, technical assistance, and technology transfer. The CRP3, containing the draft decision on capacity building, technical assistance, and technology transfer, was uploaded to the password-protected area this morning. This is in Session Document tab. I trust you had the time to review it. We will now take up CRP3 with the aim to conclude on this agenda item. Let me remind you all that COP is now entering decision-making mode. I propose we consider decision in CRP3 now for the COP to adopt, it pending confirmation from the budget contact group that any budgetary implications have been accommodated in the budget for 2024-2025.
See a request for the floor from the
I see United States on my list. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And with apologies, it's not on this agenda item. We had been requesting the floor previously. Having heard the report of the Annexes Contact Group Chair, we were hoping to have an opportunity to introduce CRP5. So with your leave, we would like to do that at the appropriate time.
Thank you for your intervention, US. With your indulgence, would you allow me to finish this item and then we'll come back and discuss? Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay then, so we were talking about CRP3 now. For the COP to adopt it pending confirmation from the budget contact group that any budgetary implications have been accommodated in the budget for the next 2 years. Are there any objections? Good. I see 2 parties on my list. First, Burkina Faso, followed by United States of America.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente.
Good morning, Madam President. I'm taking the floor on behalf of the Africa region to make our statement on capacity building, technical assistance, and technology transfer. The Africa Group welcomes the hard work of the Secretariat in the development of this report and is gratified with the identification of remaining needs and capacity building and the dialogue involving all state parties. The capacity building, technical assistance and technology transfer, depending on national or regional circumstances, are essential in order to attain these objectives of the Convention in our region. We are engaged in activities, put in place measures that physically reduces mercury waste, as well as the technical guidance adopted by the COP. The Africa region recognizes that the SIP, and other donor agencies' programs should be better targeted to meet the needs of the region. But many steps are still needed in order to address various aspects such as surveillance, mercury contamination, and management of resources, as well as many others. The Africa region would like to seize this opportunity to thank the Secretariat and all the donor agencies for their financial and technical support, continued financial technical support. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Burkina Faso. United States.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to the Secretary for posting the revised CRP. We do, however, have one minor edit that we would like to make to the text. I'm sure that the room is very excited to hear me say that again, but this time it is a very small change. In paragraph 3, at the final part of the sentence where it says, it starts of the paragraph, I'm sorry, it says, in particular, to the recommendations of the Implementation and Compliance Committee. we would ask to delete the word "the." So it would then only say, in particular, to recommendations of the Implementation and Compliance Committee. So I apologize, Madam President, a very small edit that we would propose here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United States. Can we accept this deletion proposed by the distinguished delegation of the United States of America? I see no request for the floor, no objection, so it is decided. Thank you very much. And this completes consideration for the agenda item. I will now like to turn to agenda item 4E.
Can we go back to the United States from there?
Yes, I've been advised that I'm lacking memory this morning, so apologize. I remember that I made a promise, so I will keep it now. US, you have the floor.
Many thanks, Madam President. A lot on the agenda, certainly. So, having heard the report of the co-chairs from the contact group on annexes, I would like to introduce CRP 5 from the United States and Norway regarding information on mercury-free catalysts in the production of vinyl chloride monomer, or VCM. This delegation welcomes the progress that has been made in reducing the use of mercury in VCM production. That progress amounts to a reduction of nearly 360 metric tons of mercury between 2010 and 2020. We note that a full phase-out of the use of mercury and mercury compounds in VCM production would eliminate a major source of mercury emissions. It would protect workers from the risk of mercury exposure, and it would reduce the need for primary mercury mining. Further, we firmly believe that mercury-free catalysts based on existing processes have already become technically and economically feasible for VCM production. While we are confident that such a transition to mercury-free alternatives could take place today, based on the discussion in the contact group, we understand at least one party may feel additional information is needed before joining consensus to move to a phase-out under the convention. Therefore, we are introducing a CRP proposing that the COP take two important steps at this session in order to collect that additional information. First, the CRP would invite parties and relevant organizations with expertise in mercury to provide information to the Secretariat in line with the exchange of information provisions in Articles 5.8 and 17 regarding technically and economically feasible alternatives to the use of mercury and mercury compounds in VCM production. Second, the CRP would request the Secretariat to prepare a report for consideration by the COP at its 6th meeting on technically and economically feasible mercury-free catalysts in VCM production, drawing upon the information exchanges I just described, as well as reporting from parties under Articles 5 and 21. While this proposal is not necessarily the outcome we had hoped to achieve on VCM at this COP, we recognize that there are still some differing views on this issue, and we hope our proposal will enable the COP to take an important step forward at this meeting. We look forward to the opportunity to discuss the proposal further. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, US. Okay, and with this, we move on, and I turn to agenda item 4E, releases of mercury. I wish to recall you all that Article 9 sets out provisions on releases of mercury to land and water from relevant point sources not addressed by other provisions of the Convention. The article requires each party to identify the relevant point sources categories no later than 3 years after the entry into force, to take measures to control releases, and to establish an inventory of releases from relevant sources no later than 5 years after entry into force. Article 9 also requires the CAP to adopt guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices on releases, and also guidance on inventories of releases. I would like now to turn to the Secretariat and ask them to inform on the document prepared for this agenda item.
Thank you, President. I am speaking to the document UNEP/MC/COP5/8 and INF11. A group of experts had been working on guidance on inventory of releases since COP2. Based on the work of the expert group, COP4 in its decision MC4/5 adopted the guidance on release inventories and requested the expert group to develop draft guidance on best available techniques, BAT, and best environmental practices, BEP, to control mercury releases to land and water from relevant point sources, in line with the roadmap set out in UNEP/MC/COP4/31. The expert group was co-chaired by Bianca Dramini of Eswatini and Christian Brito of Chile. Christian Brito left the government last year, and after that, Bianca Dramini chaired the group. Document 8 sets out a note by the Secretariat on the process for developing the draft guidance, including the call for submission of information on national regulations and industry practices, 7 online meetings of the group of technical experts, development of a draft guidance and technical reference document, call for comments on the draft guidance from parties and stakeholders between December 2022 and February 2023, and responses to the comments posted on the Convention's website. Annex 1 to Document 8 sets out a draft guidance document. INF 11 sets out a technical reference document that includes technical information that may support parties in using the guidance. The technical reference document is not part of the guidance, but will be made available on the Convention's website and updated with further technical information as appropriate. Annex 2 to Document 8 sets out the draft decision on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I would like now to invite the co-chair, Bianca Lamini of Eswatini, to reflect on the work of the group. Bianca, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Eswatini is taking the floor for the first time. Therefore, please allow me to congratulate you, Madam President, on your election. To thank the government and people of Switzerland for the excellent hosting in this beautiful city of Geneva, and also to thank the Secretariat for their excellent organization of this work, of this meeting. Having said that, Madam President, I come back to the work of the group of experts on mercury releases, and I am making this brief intervention as co-chair of the group of technical experts on mercury releases. First of all, allow me to extend my sincere appreciation to the members and observers of the group for their active engagement and support at the online meetings. I also thank the parties and stakeholders for their submission of relevant information and comments on the draft report. My special thanks goes to Christian Brito of Chile, with whom I worked closely to facilitate the work of the group as co-chair. The group worked in line with the roadmap agreed at COP4, including the call for information and commenting on the draft guidance. COP4 also requested that the group's work to be agreed by consensus, and that in case no consensus is reached, the Secretariat should take note of this lack of consensus, make a record of the discussion and the various positions, and note the level of support for each position. I am pleased to inform you that the group agreed on the draft guidance by consensus. The guidance document starts with an introduction and general guidance, drafted building on the BEDBEP guidance on mercury emissions under Article 8, and contains chapters presenting common techniques to control mercury releases, techniques for specific sources, and techniques for monitoring of mercury releases. Having said that, Madam President, I wish to thank again all the experts, parties, and stakeholders who contributed to the work of this group in developing the draft guidance. And I wish to thank the Secretariat for their excellent organization and facilitation for this work. Having said that, I wish to submit for adoption by the Conference of the Parties this work of the group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, and through you, thank you to all members of the expert group working on this matter. I congratulate the expert group on the completion of the draft BADBEP guidance, and I would like to invite interventions from the floor in the view of adopting the guidance and the draft decision. As you know already, I will give priority to the parties first, and I take the first intervention from European Union, followed by Norway.
Thank you and good morning, Madam President. And the EU and its member state would like to thank the group of technical experts in developing draft guidance in relation to mercury releases. We welcome the proposal by the Minamata Secretariat to adopt the guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices to control releases of mercury from relevant sources. It is our understanding that each party that has not established a pollutant release and transfer register should follow the steps outlined in the guidance on the methodology for preparing inventory of releases. We believe that such guidance will effectively allow parties to implement their obligations under Article 9 by identifying, with the help of the list of potentially relevant sources, sources relevant within their territory. So in short, Madam President, we would agree to the adoption of the decision before us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, European Union. Now I have on my list Norway, followed by Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Madam President. Releases of mercury and mercury compounds pose a substantial threat to human health and the environment. It is of great importance to control and reduce releases of mercury and mercury compounds from anthropogenic sources. Applying best available techniques and practices is an important step in controlling and reducing releases to land and water. The guidance document is an essential tool in assisting parties in fulfilling their obligations under Article 9 of the Minamata Convention. Norway would like to thank the technical expert group and the Secretariat for their work on the guidance and technical reference document. Norway supports the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norway. Now I'm giving the floor to Saudi Arabia, followed by Thailand.
شكرا السيدة الرئيسة. إن المملكة العربية السعودية.
Thank you, Madam President. We would like to thank the group of technical experts on mercury releases for their continued efforts in finding this guidance of the best practices, environmental practices to control mercury releases from relevant resources. The Kingdom has participated actively in all the meetings of the group of experts, starting from January. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would like to express its support for the document and the draft decision. Thank you.
Now I have Thailand, followed by Jordan.
Thank you very much, Madam President. My delegation would like to extend our grateful thanks to the Secretariat and all experts involved for their dedicated work in developing the guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices to control releases from relevant source pursuant to the paragraph 7 of Article 9 of the Minamata Convention. After having already reviewed by our National Subcommittee on the Minamata Convention, my delegation supports the adoption of such guidance to facilitate all parties in fulfilling their implementation of Article 9 obligation effectively. In addition, Thailand also has been approved by JEF to provide us $500,000 to implement the advanced Minamata assessment in Thailand project since last year to enable Thailand to fulfill the obligations under the Minamata Convention, in particular the National Detailed Inventory of Mercury and formulations of national implementation plans required by several provisions of this convention, including Article 8 emissions and Article 9 releases. Indeed, Thailand would like to express our profound gratitude to JEF as well as UNIDO as our JEF agency to assist us for the projects. As of now, is under the TOR development to engage the third party to implement and assist us to run operate the project properly. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Thailand. Next on my list is Jordan, followed by Nigeria.
Shukran. Thank you, Madam President. We also align ourselves with the previous speakers. We would like to thank the group of technical experts who has drafted this document. We would like to thank Eswatini for submitting this valuable document. We do believe that this guidance on the control of mercury emissions and releases is key to implementing the convention, because if we can't control these emissions, we will not be able to control these releases. So this document is extremely important, and the sound implementation of this document is extremely important. So we do support the document on the guidance, and at the same time, it is important that this guidance be explained to the developing countries, the least developing countries, at the level and at the regional level and sub-regional level, in conformity with the geographical and environmental specificities of these countries. Should we adopt this guidance should be added to the agenda as an item on the agenda, with a view to launching a dissemination campaign on the importance of the implementation, the sound implementation of this document at the regional and sub-regional levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Nigeria next, followed by India.
Thank you, Madam President. Nigeria commends the work of the technical expert group and support the adoption of the draft guidance on the best available techniques and best environmental practices to control the release of mercury from relevant sources. The development of the guidance document is critical as a crucial tool of support to national efforts in implementing Article 9 of the Convention, including the development of pollutant release and transfer register, controlling releases from open dumping and burning of waste, and also in the phase out of unwholesome environmental practices. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. Next on my list, India, followed by Uganda.
Thank you, Madam President. Recognizing the importance of releases of mercury to land and water as outlined in Article 9 of Minamata Convention, Conference of Parties in its fourth meeting adopted the methodologies for preparing inventories of releases of mercury to land and water. COP in the fourth meeting assigned the work of developing draft guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices to control releases from relevant sources to the group of experts. We appreciate and congratulate the work carried out by the group of experts in developing a draft guidance which compiled best available techniques for control of releases of mercury from common and specific sources of releases. The work has also brought forth the mercury release monitoring as per the international standards. This guidance will enable parties to take measures to adopt these techniques and practices from relevant point sources as suitable to them in their national action plans. India supports the adoption of guidance document for adoption by countries based on their national circumstances. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, India. Next on my list, Uganda, followed by Iraq.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Government of Uganda aligned itself to Botswana's position on behalf of the Africa region with regard to the adoption of guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices to control releases of mercury from relevant sources. And also, the government of Uganda wishes to thank the Secretariat on the same. Government of Uganda calls for capacity building and technical assistance in updating national inventories on relevant sources, including new sources, and support for acquisition of relevant tools to support monitoring of these releases. In addition, strengthening private sector engagement in emissions mitigation. Benchmarking of the best available practices documented in this draft report is critical for the African region. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Uganda. Iraq is next, followed by Mexico.
Thank you, Madam President. I also align myself with the previous speakers in commending the technical group of experts for drafting this important document. I think it is important that we have clear technical mechanisms. I believe that this document includes details, specific details on the best available practices and the best environmental practices aimed at controlling mercury releases. We do support this guidance document that will help member countries and the parties to live up to their obligations under this very important item. However, we would like to stress the word available because I'm talking about best available techniques and practices. So we hope that the Secretariat will kindly take into consideration the prevailing conditions and circumstances in the member countries in the drafting of I'm not talking about the drafting of the guidance document, but the drafting of the draft resolution. My suggestion or my proposal is that a sentence be added that we should provide assistance to the developing countries with a view to helping them implement these techniques. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iraq. I have on my list Mexico, followed by Chile.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mexico has made many efforts to identify the stocks and the main sources of mercury. With this in came, we identified that the main source of releases and emissions was primary mercury mining. We therefore have been undertaking initiatives to eliminate this activity, to phase it out, and monitoring on a continuous basis, and also keeping the families and the environment under safeguard measures. We want to see the parties sharing experience on their inventories and how they quantify releases and emissions. And also, we welcome this guidance on the best available techniques and best environmental practices, which we think is very critically important for parties, and we therefore support it as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mexico. Chile is next, followed by United States of America.
Muy buenos días. Very good morning, Madam Chair. Chile is grateful for the work carried out by the technical group of experts, and more particularly its co-facilitators, Eswatini and Christian Brito of Chile, as they developed guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices to control releases of mercury from relevant sources, which will enable parties to better implement Article 9 of the Convention. Chile, therefore, strongly supports the use of this guidance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chile. US, you have the floor. Mauritius is following you.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States thanks the other members of the Technical Expert Group, co-chairs, and the Secretariat for their intercessional work in creating the guidance documents on Article 9 releases. While continuing to believe that Article 9 releases are already covered by other articles of the Convention, as acknowledged in Decision 3/4, the United States welcomes the guidance documents as a further step in implementation of the Convention. It appears there are not any suggestions for changes to the guidance documents, but if those should arise, the United States would like to be consulted on those changes before they are adopted in plenary. Finally, the United States has a suggested change to the draft decision found in Annex 2 of Document 8. In paragraph 3, we suggest striking the final words, which read, "and to keep the guidance under review." Hearing from other distinguished parties, it sounds that implementation is a higher priority than further review of these documents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. Mauritius next, followed by Botswana.
First and foremost, Mauritius would like to thank the government of Switzerland and the Secretary of the Minamata Convention for making this 5th meeting of the Conference of Parties to the Minamata Convention possible, and for all the preparatory work for this meeting. We would also like to commend the work of the group of the technical experts co-chaired by Chile and Eswatini for drafting the guidance documents on the best available techniques and best environmental practices to control the release of mercury from relevant sources. Mauritius supports the adoption of the guidance document, which we believe will support the implementation of Article 9 of the Minamata Convention by parties and effectively control the release of mercury from relevant port sources. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mauritius. Next on my list, Botswana, followed by Peru.
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished participants. The Africa region welcomes the report on the Secretariat on the work of the expert group on releases of mercury, as highlighted in Article 9 of the Minamata Convention text. We also welcome the draft guidance document on the development of inventories on releases of mercury. We thank all who contributed to this very important work and further request for resources to be made available for its implementation, especially for developing country parties like our region. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Botswana. Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We welcome the initiative because we believe that in Peru, we have a level of mining that is representative, especially in terms of small-scale mining, because this leads to releases of mercury, and our country therefore has been implemented actions framed by our first multi-sectoral national policy for ASGM, which covers services to promote the use of clean technologies so that we can help phase out the use of mercury. And for this reason, we agree with the efforts made in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peru. I have no parties on my list, so I will move on to organizations. And before doing that, I saw Burundi pressing the button, so in this case, Burundi, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam President. Burundi, just like other speakers, other countries, takes very seriously the releases of mercury in gold panning and from other activities. And that's why we support the document and request the Secretariat to take the necessary measures in order to develop practical modalities of action in all developing countries, and to foresee capacity strengthening, capacity building, as well as decontamination of sites contaminated by mercury. Thank you.
Now I move on to organizations, and I see IPEN. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. IPEN appreciates the work done by the Technical Expert Group on Mercury releases, on the development of the draft guidance document, on best available techniques and best environmental practices to control releases from relevant sources. The guidance is crucial to further prevent or reduce human exposure and environmental contamination by mercury. Therefore, we encourage parties to adopt the guidance at this scope. However, we regret that information about some relevant point sources of mercury into land and water are missing in the document, in particular with relation to shipping, cement, or waste incineration industries. Specifically, the guidance document is lacking appropriate information about releases of mercury from secondary use of incineration bottom ash, in particular when bottom ash is used as construction material, soil amendment, or other agricultural application, despite direct application of such mercury-contaminated material on the surface of land. Similarly, the document also neglects releases from shipbreaking despite the potential direct mercury leaking into water. The information on releases from mercury-based pesticides or from mercury-contaminated sites are also missing or are insufficient in the document. To conclude, IPEN truly appreciates the work by the technical group and finds the existing draft document very useful and critical for reducing polluting mercury releases. Nevertheless, we are using this opportunity to share our concerns and alert parties of the Minamata Convention that the lack of information in the document may negatively affect the health of impacted communities who deserve protection through the treaty provisions. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, IPEN. Next on my list is Say No to Mercury.
Thank you, Madam President and the Secretariat for organising this meeting. Say No to Mercury wishes to thank the Government of Switzerland for hosting this important event. This is the first time Say No to Mercury takes the floor at COP5. For 12 years, Say No to Mercury has participated actively at this convention, joining other NGOs to champion the cause for a universal phase-out of mercury dental amalgam. The journey thus far has been challenging. This is my testimony to clarify a realistic perspective for the parties. My dental career began when I was 17 years old in Brisbane, Australia, 40 years ago. In the basement of the university building with no ventilation, I would, with my bare hands, mix liquid mercury and powder alloys of silver and tin and practice putting the amalgam into the plastic model teeth. Later, I would use encapsulated amalgam and implant this mercury alloy into my patient's teeth. The amalgam was soft due to the mercury oozing out. If the amalgam filling broke, I would fail the class because of poor technique when handling this material. Sometimes the patient would swallow a substantial amount of the debris, but this was of no concern because they taught me that amalgam was safe. We would dispose of the plastic capsule and the unused mercury dental amalgam by putting it into the bin. Even today, this remains the same practice by dentists worldwide, except now they wear gloves and a mask. I did not wear any personal protective equipment like masks and gloves while handling mercury dental amalgam at university. Upon graduating from dental school, I worked in the school dental service for 2 years, where I would place mercury dental amalgam into children aged 4 to 12 years of age. Even though glass ionomer cements were available, I was instructed only to use this material for fissure sealants. I became aware of scientific publications from the European Dental Journal that established a relationship between mercury in dental amalgam and congenital disabilities in children. This information is now disclosed in the material safety data sheets of the amalgam manufacturers. I immediately switched to composite resin fillings as this material was readily available 33 years ago and was made by the same company I used to buy my dental amalgam from. Plus, it was not much more expensive than the amalgam capsules. At no stage for the remainder of my dental career was there ever a clinical situation where I wished I could have used mercury dental amalgam. Almost 2 decades of daily occupational exposure to mercury without wearing effective personal protection equipment has rendered me with mercury poisoning, validated by high levels of mercury in my hair tissue sample. Fortunately, I was appropriately diagnosed and underwent specific mercury detoxification. The second episode of mercury poisoning occurred when I was changing the canister full of dental amalgam waste from the amalgam separator device. A blood test confirmed mercury poisoning. I share my story with you to demonstrate that all the excuses of the contrived need to continue using mercury dental amalgam, such as it's cheap, it's strong, it's inert, it's easy, it lasts longer, it's safe, are not valid. There is no justification for the continued use of this primitive, poisonous, polluting product in modern dentistry. The time is now to say no to mercury and end the mercury age in dentistry.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I see no more requests for the floor. I thank you for that. And I can say that I am delighted to hear positive interventions and almost unanimous support for the proposed guidance from a number of parties. I could see that in the light of the views expressed here, the COP is in a position to proceed to conclude on this matter. I heard 2 parties proposing changes to the draft decision. So, in this regard, I invite Iraq and the United States to repeat the specific proposal. Now, press the button. Okay, I will take US first, then Iraq.
Thank you, Madam President. The specific proposal was in paragraph 3, we suggest striking the final words, which read, "and to keep the guidance under review."
Thank you very much, US. Yes, Iraq, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My proposal was to add, we agree on the guidance, but we are talking about the decision itself. It could be mentioned that there is a support to the developing countries in the implementation of this guidance.
I fully agree with your intervention, but I'm asking for concrete words. I mean, could you formulate something and present to us, please?
Sorry, Madam President, I will give me 5 minutes if it's possible. Thank you very much.
3. Okay, Iraq, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam President. I'm sorry to let you wait for me. My proposal is to amend the third point of the resolution, or the decision, sorry, to add a request the Secretariat to support parties, especially the developing countries, in order to implement these guidelines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iraq. So we would like to read out what was compiled, just to be sure that we got the right message. So Secretariat will read now the new form of paragraph 3.
Thank you, President. Noting that this is a guidance document and which is for use and not the direct implementation of the guidance, what the phrase that Secretary captured is as follows. Request the Secretariat to support parties, especially parties, developing country parties and parties in economies in transition, in the use of the guidance. Thank you very much.
Yes, Chirac.
Thank you very much, Madam President. What about application, not implementing? Applying, for example.
Okay, now in this case, I'm requesting parties to support the latest version of paragraph 3 or to comment on that. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Could maybe the Secretariat read out what text we are now invited to support, because we are not sure what is the latest language. Thank you.
Sure. Secretariat, could you please read again?
The text proposed, captured by the Secretariat and proposed by the Iraq, the further proposed by Iraq is as follows. The paragraph 3 would read, request the Secretariat to support parties, especially developing country parties and parties in economies in transitions, in the application of the guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Brazil supports the text as just read by the Secretariat, including Iraq's proposal and the deletion proposed by the US. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brazil. Nigeria, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Just like we said in our intervention, these documents are very important to developing countries, and therefore we support the proposal made by Iraq. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. Okay, I see no more requests for the floor. And with this, I would like to propose that COP adopts the draft decision in document 8 and the draft guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices to control releases from relevant sources as set out in Annex 1 to document 8 and amended as we discussed. Are there any objections? US?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a request for clarification regarding the intervention, the amendment from Iraq, to make sure that having already closed on the item of capacity building, we want to make sure there's no budgetary implications for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, US. So based on the US comments, I will give the floor to Secretariat to read out the final version that we are proposing for the third paragraph.
Good day. Thank you, Madam President. So taking into account the latest proposal by United States, the further amended paragraph 3 in the decision will read as follows. Request the Secretariat, subject to the availability of resources, to support parties, especially in developing country parties and parties with economies in transition in the application of the guidance. Full stop.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I see US followed by Brazil.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm intervene again to be concerned that clarification may take us further from being able to agree to the text.
Thank you very much, US. Brazil?
Thank you, Madam President. If I understood correctly, the US position, it's the same as ours. I think the proposed amendments just specified that support would be given to a particular group, but paragraph 3 itself, as it was from the beginning, it was already any budgetary implications were already there. So I see that we went into one direction, supporting developing countries and economies in transition specifically, and then we go in the other direction, that the whole paragraph is subject to availability of resources. I think the decision was already, from the beginning, depending on the availability of resources. So I would stick to the, not the very last, but the prior version without subject to availability of resources, if that can be agreed upon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brazil. Canada.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't actually have a change to suggest, but rather, could the Secretariat please project the text on screen, because it's very difficult to follow all these changes as they are happening. And I recall in the past, the Secretariat did used to do this so that we could see the changes as we were going through line by line. It would be much appreciated, because it's very hard for us to respond on the spot without seeing actual text. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Okay, thank you very much for your indulgence. Now I'm asking the Secretariat to present what is on the screen.
Thank you, Madam President. So what you see on the screen is the new revised para 3, which requests the Secretariat to support parties, especially developing country parties and parties with economies in transition in the application of the guidance. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I have Jordan on my list. You have the floor.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. أود أن أستوضح من الأمانة فيما إذا كان هناك ريفرنس لأي قرار يتخذ بما فيه.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to know if there are any financial repercussions of such a decision on the budget and the program of work. Are there any financial implications? It would seem to me that there is a correlation between the budget and the reference to this decision in the budget in the first place, and secondly, that will also have a bearing on the program of work for the next period. So if we heard clarifications about those two aspects, it would help us with the wording as well, with the appropriate wording. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Secretariat, please, could you provide an answer?
Thank you, Madam President. As pointed out by Brazil, the change is to specify or draw particular attention to developing country parties and parties in economies in transition. And secondly, the use, the change of the word used to application. So we would explain to the budget contact group that this will not have any additional budgetary implication. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. So with this in mind, I would like to go back at the moment, but before that, I'm giving the floor to Jordan.
Yes, sorry, I didn't get the answer for my clarification. Whether we have reference to this decision, to the budget, and for the program of work, please, I need clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would explain to the budget contact group that this support requested in this decision is within the current program of work and budget under the scientific and technical activities to support parties to control the emission releases of Mercury. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Okay, so I would like to go back at the moment while I'm asking if there are any objections that the COP adopts the draft decision in document 8 and the draft guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices to control releases from relevant sources as set out in Annex 1 to document 8 and amended as it was presented. I see no objections, so it is so decided. The decision and guidance are adopted pending confirmation from the budget contact group that any budgetary implication have been accommodated in the budget for the next 2 years. Thank you very much. And with this, we conclude consideration of agenda item 4E. Now, I would like to turn your attention to agenda item 4M, gender. Let me recall that COP4 adopted decision MC4/10 on gender mainstreaming, which invited parties to support the Secretariat in its efforts to mainstream gender into all activities to be undertaken by the Secretariat as well as by the parties and other stakeholders, including through the development of Gender Action Plan for the Minamata Convention during biennium 2022-2023. I invite now the Secretariat to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam President. Pursuant to decision MC4/10, and thanks to the financial support of Sweden, the Secretariat prepared a draft Gender Action Plan and organized 2 online consultations for parties and other stakeholders between September and December 2022 to present and receive inputs on the draft. A call for nominations to participate in this consultative process was issued by the Secretariat on 12 August 2022. 23 representatives were nominated by parties. After the consultations, the Secretariat invited additional written comments from parties and stakeholders. The Gender Action Plan, incorporating the comments received by the Secretariat through the consultative process, is set out in Information Document 10. The Gender Action Plan provides a comprehensive blueprint for actions to promote gender equality. It identifies both the enabling conditions and the specific policy and programmatic steps needed to mainstream gender in all activities within the purview of the Convention. The plan is organized according to actions proposed for both the Secretariat and for parties. Considering its long-term objectives and the limited resources available for its implementation, the Gender Action Plan does not include any specific timelines or deadlines. Instead, the suggested approach for implementing the plan is to identify a list of priorities that could be carried out during each biennium and to integrate these activities as appropriate into the program of work and budget to be adopted by the COP. The list of suggested activities is set out in Annex 1 to document 18. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I would like now to open the floor to hear views on the presented document, including the draft decision regarding this matter. I will give priorities to parties first, and I will start with Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam President. Indonesia firmly upholds the belief that the participation and the role of women in all settings is critical in achieving gender equality and empowerment of women. We are of the view that the Minamata Convention is an important instrument to us all, which embodies our common concern, spirit, and commitment to implement it at its fullest. Therefore, the instrument and its implementation mechanism should be acceptable for all. For Indonesia, the issue of gender and equality and women empowerment are one of the key issues to address in today's global challenge. Thus, Indonesia will always stand ready to involve and participate in any gender equality initiative worldwide, including the Minamata Conventions. And we take note the Gender Action Plan that has been prepared by the Secretariat to increase the inclusivity of the conventions. And we also view that the current draft decisions is quite balanced and could be based for further discussion among parties. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. I have Chile on my list, followed by Botswana.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Madam President. We would like to express our sincere appreciation to the Secretariat for the diligent activities it has carried out to effectively mainstream gender in the implementation of the Gender Action Plan within the framework of this convention. The work that has been carried out is key towards taking this initiative forward. In Chile, we are committed to the cause, and we have been taking decisive action to internally coordinate the generation of disaggregated data. We believe strongly that this effort will enable us to identify and address emerging challenges in this area and to do so effectively. This effort is not only necessary, but it is also essential for the effective implementation of the gender perspective in all realms of our society. For that reason, we call for and we encourage all stakeholders to focus their efforts on implementing this action plan. This is a crucial step forward to guaranteeing that we achieve the goals and targets set out in the Gender Action Plan. In conclusion, we wish to express our appreciation and gratitude for the efforts that are now being carried out in the contact group on the program of work and budget group. And we're particularly grateful for this inclusion of this critical issue in its activities, and more specifically in the training and outreach activities on gender issues. We believe that these initiatives are fundamental to fostering a deeper understanding and greater awareness of gender issues. There is no doubt that these efforts will prove to be a vital step towards creating a more fair and inclusive society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chile. Next on my list, Botswana, followed by European Union.
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished participants. With regard to this specific item on the agenda, the Africa region would like to thank the Convention Secretariat for the roadmap drawn up to monitor this issue as part of the implementation of the Convention, and for the work undertaken during the 22-23 biennium. Gender issues are increasingly integrated into development projects, particularly in the formulation and planning of all initiatives contributing to the protection of the environment and public health. Our region would like gender equity to be a cross-cutting priority for the Convention. It was for this reason that the Convention Secretariat mentioned it so well in its presentation. It is also important to point out that the countries of the region are also paying particular attention to taking the gender dimension into account throughout the process of designing, submitting, and implementing all programs and projects aimed at combating exposure to and pollution by mercury. It would therefore be desirable for the Conference of the Parties to put in place a mechanism to enable the Secretariat of the Convention not only to continue with its work during the 24-25 biennium, but also to facilitate the monitoring and collection of information on the inclusion of gender equality aspects from countries in all programs and projects initiated by the Convention. Women are the main driving force for change, but so many social and cultural limitations restrict them from the decision-making process and from participating in environmental policies, projects, and programs. To this end, the countries of the Africa region are in favor of continuing consultations on this issue and of the Conference of the Parties evaluating and adopting the action plan proposed by the Secretariat. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Botswana. European Union, followed by Argentina.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Good morning. The European Union and its member states underscore the importance of gender equality and empowerment. We underscore the importance of implementation of gender policies and action plans developed under the multilateral environmental agreements, which we are parties to. We're committed to ensuring the full and equal participation of men and women alike in decision-making processes and in the formal economy. Furthermore, we are dedicated to promoting an active and visible policy of mainstreaming a gender perspective in all our policies and programs. To advance these goals, we support the proposal to request the Secretariat to carry out activities during the biennium 2024 to 2025, subject to the availability of resources to implement the Gender Action Plan. In this endeavor, we encourage the Secretariat to continue collaborating with the United Nations Environment Programme, the Secretariats of other multilateral environmental agreements, the Global Environmental Facility, and other relevant partners in the field of gender mainstreaming. To ensure accountability and progress, we advocate for a comprehensive review of the implementation of the Gender Action Plan. Furthermore, we support the proposal to consider possible activities to be carried out by the Secretariat, parties, and other stakeholders during the biennium 2026 to 2027 as appropriate. To reflect that such activities should be carried out subject to the availability of resources, we will be submitting small amendments regarding paragraphs 6 and 7 of the draft decision in writing. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much. European Union, Argentina next, followed by Nigeria.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you, Madam President. Argentina would like to congratulate and thank the Secretariat for bringing about this very important focus in the agenda of the convention and promoting actions to reduce the existing inequalities when it comes to historic roles and social gender roles as well, and also raising awareness of the exposure to mercury. We would like to underscore the fact that Argentina has been advancing in this area, and we have introduced this in our national legislation on mercury and compounds. We have been training the public at large, and we have been providing them with information on mercury exposure through the products that are in the health sector, and the link between this phenomenon and care and social roles. We believe strongly that gender action should not be a mere formality, but rather a genuine effort to remove the gaps and the negative impacts that have health and environmental impacts on women and families generally. We believe that the activities mentioned will help to shed light on those aspects that so far have not been properly explored or even addressed. And this is key if we are to have a genuinely effective public policy. For this reason, Argentina stands ready to continue to collaborate in future work on this agenda item, and to have it considered and promoted within the framework of this convention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Argentina. Next on my list is Nigeria, followed by El Salvador.
Thank you, Madam President. The government of Nigeria aligns with the position of the African group. We are pleased that efforts are being made to mainstream gender within the activities carried out under the convention. It is well known that women form a significant proportion of the population affected by mercury use and exposure. Thus, Nigeria ensures the integration of a gender equality perspective at all stages and levels of related policies, programs, and projects. We have taken note of the gender roadmap of the Minamata Convention on Mercury and will take steps, including through partnerships, to replicate at the national level, as well as implementing our national gender policy accordingly. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. Next on my list, El Salvador, followed by Iraq.
Señora Presidente.
Madam President, since this is the first time that delegation is taking the floor, we would like to congratulate you on your work. And we also would like to say how grateful we are to the government of Switzerland and the Canton of Geneva for their hospitality. And also grateful to the Secretariat for its arduous work in organizing this, the 5th Conference of the Parties, and to all donors that have helped us achieve this. Gender equality and empowering women is important for our country and government. And for this reason, we support the document and the action plan therein. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, El Salvador. Now I have Iraq, followed by United States of America.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة. إن المرأة تحمل مكانتها.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, women play an essential role in the development and protection of the environment in Iraq. We are striving to provide for women's rights and protect them as a vulnerable category. It's one of our top priorities. Nevertheless, we have certain concerns with regard to the introduction of a new concept linked to gender, and which may turn out to be incompatible with international law or even impede our work. We'd like to remind you of one of the advantages of the Arabic language, and that names can be either feminine, masculine, in the singular, plural, or the dual. So the translation into Arabic needs to be more precise, because these documents have a legal power. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Iraq. US, you have the floor, and Uganda is going to follow you.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States thanks the Secretariat for their work on gender. We appreciate this effort to further promote gender equality in the Convention's bodies and processes, and also in the implementing activities for the Convention, and see this as an important aspect of the Convention's mission of protecting human health and the environment. The United States encourages the implementation of the Gender Action Plan and an enhanced focus on programming that includes party-specific project activities that will address gender equality, and we support the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. Uganda, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The government of Uganda aligns itself to Botswana's position on behalf of the Africa region with regard to the adoption of the decision on gender, and also wishes to thank the Secretariat on the same. Government of Uganda calls for support in the development of gender action plans, including reviewing the NAPs on ASGM to adequately integrate gender concerns, especially in mercury use and governance at mining sites. For instance, at mining sites, where we have found women who are not in position to purchase the mercury, using other regrettable means to purchase this mercury. In addition, it is common to find women in governance at levels of treasurers only. And therefore, government calls upon for support in empowering women in this area and also in other areas of mercury-added products to be able to desist from skin lightening products and dental amalgam where it's justifiable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uganda. Before moving on to observers, since I don't have any party on my list, I would like to request the EU to present us the comments and the additional paragraph that you would like to add or change, just to have a clear picture about your proposal.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. We have submitted to the Secretariat our amendments, but if you prefer, we can read them out.
Los cambios.
The changes would be in paragraph 6.
Añadir.
We would add, after request the Secretariat, comma, add
To the availability of resources, comma. En el párrafo.
in paragraph 7, we would make the same change. After also requests the Secretariat,
Subject to the availability of resources, comma. Esos serían los.
those would be the comments to be submitted by the EU and its member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much, you. Thank you. Now I would like to move on to observers, and I'm giving the floor to IPEN.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm speaking on behalf of IPEN and its participating organization ISDO Bangladesh. To address the continuous global mercury crisis emanating from skin lightening products, we support the proposed amendment by the African region to strengthen the existing provisions with the convention. These products are mainly used by women and girls, and therefore this issue is highly relevant to gender. First, concerning Amendment Annex A, Part 1, the amendment proposes to replace the existing ban on the manufacture, import, and export of cosmetics over 1 ppm mercury, with prohibiting mercury-added cosmetics starting in 2025. By eliminating the mercury threshold, parties can more effectively conduct market surveillances by utilizing simple, cost-effective handheld testing devices that preclude the need for lab testings. Second, concerning amending Annex A, Part 2, proposed measures include the following: setting national objectives to phase out sale and offering sales is necessary. Coordinating and collaborating on phase-out initiatives interministerially, bilaterally, and/or regionally. Raising public awareness about the hazards of SLP use among physicians, dermatologists, beauty centers, as well as consumers and family members. Above all, COP5 should initiate activities to evaluate whether the trade in specific mercury compounds compromises the objective of these conventions and considers whether specific mercury compounds should be subject to trade restrictions following Article 3, Paragraph 13 of the Convention. Along with this, IPEN and ISDO support the amendment in Annex A for dental amalgam, which is phasing out the use of dental amalgam by 2030, discourage use in pregnant women and children, and the overall phase out dental amalgam from 2030. That is already enforced. We believe endorsing this amendment is achievable, as they can be implemented without compromising dental care requirements, given the global availability, efficacy, and affordability of mercury-free alternatives. The first step is to assess the global supply, trade, and use of mercury compound, and IPEN and ISDA also support the gender, what is this? Action plan. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, IPEN. Next on my list, I have Armenian Women for Health and Healthy Environment.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm talking on behalf of Armenian Women for Health and Healthy Environment and the Zero Mercury Working Group. Mercury is a dangerous neurotoxin with a detrimental impact on the health of women and children, and through them, future generations. Women and children are exposed directly and indirectly as a result of occupational hazards, food chain contamination, or the use of mercury-added products. Women are most vulnerable to exposure during the preconception, pregnancy, and postnatal periods, given that mercury crosses the placental barrier. We believe that raising public awareness on the gendered and intersectional nature of mercury exposure, production, and consumption is necessary for enhancing women's grassroots action and participation in policy discussions. If empowered with gender-sensitive knowledge and skills, women's groups at all levels can become agents of change. Zero Mercury Working Group therefore welcomes the Gender Action Plan as it identifies the enabling conditions and specific policy and programmatic steps to mainstream gender and empower women and girls within all activities under the Convention. In particular, we welcome the knowledge dissemination activities of the Gender Action Plan on gender-specific topics such as, for example, the mercury-added skin lightening creams. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I see no request for the floor, except one second. It's from International Indian Treaty Council. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I am speaking on behalf of the International Indian Treaty Council. We support the Gender Action Plan, which lists the importance of Indigenous women as life bearers and knowledge holders. We commend the inclusion of language that reads, health services and metrics to understand and mitigate the effects of mercury exposures will be developed with a gender lens. Women's potential roles as agents of change will be enhanced by identifying and addressing the gender inequalities they face and the intersectional barriers to their full agency. However, we raise concern of the reference of Indigenous and local communities throughout the Gender Action Plan and other areas in this process. The term Indigenous and local communities is an outdated term used in the early days of the Convention of Biodiversity. All other UNEP processes have updated their language to the appropriate recognized international standard of Indigenous peoples. We urge parties to honor their endorsements of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples from this point forward, and to acknowledge our status as peoples, not as stakeholders or organizations or communities. We are Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples are a recognized UN major group. Finally, we support the establishment of a Women's Delegate Fund to support representation and meaningful participation of underrepresented groups, including Indigenous women, women from least developed countries, and small island developing states. Madzigidads, and thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Last on my list, Sustainable Development Policy Institute. You have the floor.
Thank you for giving me the floor. I support the Minamata Secretariat for this action plan as guidance for the activities. The gender equity and empowerment is the key for the journey towards Zero Mercury slogan. Women and young girls are vulnerable communities, but it is also important to make this action plan inclusive of the gender minorities. Their vulnerability is double-edged as exposure to the mercury-added products due to the social and circumstantial issues and unequal access to the health care.
Activities around the ASGM and the mercury added skin whitening creams needs to be more gender sensitive, not only including the women, but also the men. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Distinguished delegates, I am encouraged by the views expressed on this important matter for the Convention. I also note a comment from the European Union on paragraphs 6 and 7 to the draft decision. For the sake of clarity, I would like to invite the Secretariat to read out the paragraphs 6 and 7 with the suggested changes.
Thank you, Madam President. So I will read you paragraph 6 first of the draft decision. Requests the Secretariat, subject to the availability of resources, in the implementation of the Gender Action Plan, to continue collaborating with the United Nations Environment Programme, the Secretariats of other multilateral environmental agreements, the Global Environment Facility, and other relevant partners in the field of gender mainstreaming. Paragraph 7 would read, also requests the Secretariat, subject to the availability of resources, to review implementation of the Gender Action Plan and to propose possible activities to be carried out by the Secretariat, parties and other stakeholders during the biennium 2026-2027 as appropriate for consideration by the Conference of the Parties at its 6th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. And with this in mind, I propose that the COP adopts the decision as set out in the annex to document 18 with the changes that were just read out, pending confirmation from the budget contact group that any budgetary implications have been accommodated in the budget for the next biennium. Are there any objections to my proposal? Seeing none, it is so decided. Thank you very much. Excellent. So with this, we complete consideration on agenda item 4M. Now, I would like to proceed to the other items remaining under agenda item 4, and I will start with item 4N, knowledge management. This is the first time that knowledge management is included on the agenda of the COP. I invite the Secretariat to introduce the document. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Document 19 outlines an overview of the progress made so far by the Secretariat, which is then detailed in Information Document 26, with respect to a digital strategy with a midterm vision to guide the work of the Secretariat. The digital strategy, in line with UNEA, UN, and UNEP data policies, seeks to accelerate the momentum that has already been achieved by the Secretariat and its partners to trigger environmental action. It looks to expand and strengthen services, processes, and tools, and to promote digital transformation and capacities with the ultimate goal to support parties in their implementation of the Convention. The digital strategy is organized into 3 sections. 1, digital ecosystem, main tools and infrastructure like the website, digital services for COPs, online reporting tool, dashboard, digital repository and information exchange platform. 2, building partnership on digital literacy with e-learning initiatives, enhancing digital skills and collaboration with relevant stakeholders. And 3, governance and innovation based on existing international standards for data management, accessibility, data privacy, semantic relationship, metrics, inclusiveness, among others. The document also contains a draft decision in its Annex 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I would like now to open the floor to hear your views on the presented document, including the draft decision regarding this matter. As you are aware already, I'm going to prioritize the parties, then observers. So I have on my list Burkina Faso. You have the floor.
Une fois de plus, merci bien.
Once again, thank you very much, Madam President, for giving me the floor. I'm speaking on behalf of the Africa region to make a statement on knowledge management and digitalization. Madam President of COP5, the Africa region congratulates the Secretariat of the Convention on the progress made in knowledge management and digitalization since the coming into force of the Convention. The Africa region appreciates the cooperation with the Secretariat of the Convention, with the Secretariat of the multilateral conventions on the environment, and so within the framework of the Informia UNEP initiative. We thank the Secretariat for developing a strategy for digitalizing data, and is gratified with the fact that this new tool would enable countries to access and manage data in all security for efficient and sustainable development, and requests the COP to adopt a decision which would make it possible for this strategy of digitalization and developed by the Secretariat is taken on board in the program of work and the budget of the Convention for the biennial period of 2024-25. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Burkina Faso. Next on my list, European Union, followed by United States of America.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The European Union and its member states would like to express their appreciation for the commendable efforts made by the Minamata Secretariat in advancing knowledge management and digitalization since the Convention came into force. These initiatives are instrumental in enhancing the effectiveness and implementation of the Convention. Furthermore, we welcome the proposal presented by the Minamata Secretariat to guide their work in the years ahead, and they will be particularly focusing on leveraging technology and efficiently managing knowledge to support the Convention's implementation. We concur that the implementation of the digital strategy should commence in alignment with the program of work and budget for the Convention during the biennium 2024 to 2025. But in paragraph 2, we would like to request the Secretariat to prioritize relevant activities to implement the strategy in the programs of work and budgets for the following bienniums, rather than just proposing new activities without prioritization. We emphasize the importance of the Secretariat's continued collaboration with the Secretariats of other multilateral environmental agreements and strategic partners, including the United Nations Information Portal on Multilateral Environmental Agreements, known as Informea initiative. This collaborative approach is vital for effective knowledge management, digitalization, and information exchange. The European Union and its member states are committed to supporting these endeavors, as they are pivotal for the smooth functioning and advancement of the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, EU. US, you have the floor, and Indonesia is going to follow you.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States supports the efforts of the Minamata Secretariat to advance knowledge management through effective information exchange and accelerated digitization processes. The United States also supports the interaction between the Minamata Convention on Mercury and other relevant stakeholders to address climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. The United States recognizes the importance of heightened access and use of data for Mercury-related endeavors and accepts Informia as the Minamata Convention's automated data platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Indonesia would like to thank and assure its conditioned support to the work of the Secretariat, which has made significant progress in utilizing digital tools to support progress towards the goals of the Convention and support the work of the parties in the efficient manners. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. I see no other requests. But I think I will need like maximum 3 minutes just to finalize. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience. And also, I would like to thank you for your comments and your appreciation of the Secretariat's digital strategy. And also, in the meantime, for your support to the draft decision contained in document 19. I would like to announce you that the COP enters into decision mode. And I think we can proceed with the adoption of the draft decision in document 19, pending confirmation from the budget contact group that any budgetary implications have been accommodated in the budget for 2024-2025. Are there any objections to my proposal? EU, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Our intervention is just to ensure that note has been taken of the proposed change that we have submitted to the Secretariat. And that is supposed to replace the word propose with prioritize relevant. Thank you very much.
Mi referencia es...
My reference is with respect to paragraph 2.
Just to clarify that everything is according to your comments, I'm going to ask the Secretariat to read it. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President, excuse me. So I understand that the proposed change is as follows, and it relates to paragraph 2 in the decision, and in the third line of it, where the proposal is to exchange the word with propose with prioritize. And as a consequence, the entire paragraph will read as follows. Agrees that implementation of the digital strategy should begin in accordance with the program of work and budget for the convention for the biennium 2024-2025, and request the Secretariat to prioritize activities to implement the strategy in the program of work and budget for the following bienniums. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. EU, it's okay?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. We would be grateful if the word relevant were also included as we had submitted it to the Secretariat. So it would read, prioritize relevant activities. Prioritize relevant activities. Thank you.
De nada. Okay, thank you. Yes, it's going to be included. Great. And having this in mind, I'm just going to repeat my request to the COP to proceed with the adoption of the draft decision in document 19, pending confirmation from the budget contact group that any budgetary implications have been accommodated in the budget for the next 2 years. Are there any objections to my proposal? I see none. It is so decided. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your cooperation. It's highly appreciated. And if you allow me now, I would like to propose you to move on to item 4.0, Mercury and Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And with this, I would like to invite the Secretariat to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished delegates. Following a request in decision MC4/12, the Secretariat prepared working document 20 for this meeting. The document contains in section 2 a brief overview of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Section 3 of the document provides a summary of key messages from a report prepared by the Secretariat on how the implementation of the Convention and the Global Biodiversity Framework can be implemented in a mutually supportive manner. While Section 4 and the next one put forward a proposed action for consideration by the Conference of the Parties at this meeting. Annex 2 of Document 20 contains examples of opportunities to generate co-benefits from the implementation of the Minamata Convention on Mercury and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. A report that was developed thanks to the generous financial support by the governments of Norway and Sweden, and that served as a basis for the working document is available as information document 27. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Secretariat, for your introduction. So now I'm going to open the floor to hear views on the proposed draft decision on this matter. I will start with parties, and after the list is exhausted, I'm going to move to observers. So first on my list is Uganda, followed by European Union.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Government of Uganda still aligned itself to Botswana's position on behalf of the Africa region with regard to the adoption of the decision on Mercury and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. In Uganda, ASGM impacts on biodiversity have been more visible at the ecosystem level through deforestation, soil degradation, water pollution, and loss of habitats. For instance, with regard to habitat loss in Uganda, 88% of gold produced in Uganda is from pits as compared to 12% from shafts, and yet there is non-restoration of pits. The harvest of timber for construction of shafts is extensive, not only in Uganda, but East African region as a whole. ASGM cites are equally associated with poor disposal of plastic waste. If the Africa region is to move from science to action, there will be need to target biodiversity financing to cover chemicals management, including ASGM, to promote sustainable intensification of ASGM activities, for instance, through use of biotechnology, to promote fast-growing trees that will not become invasive, to adopt the whole of government, whole of society approach in formalization of the ASGM sector. Madam President, Uganda embraces Target 7 of the GBF, which among others speaks to reducing the overall risk from highly hazardous chemicals, including mercury, and also preventing, reducing, and working towards eliminating plastic pollution. Uganda calls upon a strong collaboration between the Minamata Secretariat and the CBD to ensure integration of chemicals and waste concerns in the Global Biodiversity Framework, financing mechanism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Uganda. You have the floor. US is coming after you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam President. The European Union and its member states welcome the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, an important milestone in the fight against biodiversity loss and overall the triple planetary crisis of pollution, biodiversity loss, and climate change. We would like to underscore the remarkable potential for co-benefits that can arise from the joint implementation of the Minamata Convention and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The synergies between these two instruments are invaluable, allowing us to address environmental challenges in a more holistic and comprehensive manner. In this context, we would like to commend the efforts of the Minamata Secretariat for their report on how the Minamata Convention and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework can support and complement each other in a mutually reinforcing manner. Such collaboration is essential for achieving our shared goals and serves as an example for other multilateral environmental agreements. Furthermore, we acknowledge the meticulous mapping of linkages between the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the implementation of the Minamata Convention, as we can see in Annex 2 of the working document. This mapping serves as a valuable guide for our collective efforts. The European Union and its member states agree to adopt the draft decision, but with some small amendments. First, we would like to include a paragraph after paragraph 2, welcoming the so-called Bern meetings set up by Switzerland to support synergies between relevant MEAs, including Minamata. Second, we would like to change paragraph 5 in order to better reflect the mandate and priorities of the Ad Hoc Technical Expert Group, ATEG for short, on indicators for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. ATEG's main priority is to focus on those targets where no headline indicators are available. While there is currently no specific headline indicator on highly hazardous chemicals, there are 2 other indicators for Target 7. Furthermore, ATEG can only look at proposals for indicators that already exist. So, an indicator may need to be provided by the Minamata Convention and COP16, which could then decide on this. We will hand in these changes in writing. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, you. Thank you very much. US is next on my list, followed by Nigeria.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States welcomes efforts to identify areas where the Global Biodiversity Framework and the Minamata Convention can support each other. We would like to thank the Secretariat for its work on identifying mutually supportive opportunities for the two instruments, including entry points for co-benefits and knowledge gaps and barriers to generating those co-benefits. The inclusion within the Global Biodiversity Framework of indicators related to highly hazardous chemicals and mercury in particular is key for ensuring pursuit and evaluation of mutually beneficial opportunities. We support the draft decision with one note, and that is that language in this draft decision on the Global Environment Facility is redundant, as there is very similar language in the financial mechanisms decision where we believe it is more appropriate. For that reason, we would like to strike paragraph 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. Nigeria, followed by United Republic of Tanzania.
Thank you, Madam President. Nigeria supports the adoption of the draft decision as set out in Annex 1 of the document. We acknowledge the fact that mercury pollution impacts ecosystem as a direct driver and underlying cause of global loss of biodiversity. Therefore, effective implementation of the Minamata Convention will significantly contribute to global efforts to conserve and sustainable use biodiversity. We also support that the Secretary of the Minamata Convention cooperates with relevant international organizations and conventions to enhance and strengthen synergies in the implementation of the Minamata Convention, Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and other relevant conventions and multilateral agreements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. Tanzania, followed by Turkey.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving us the floor. Tanzania commends the work of Secretariat in preparing a report on how the Minamata Convention could contribute to the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework for consideration by Conference of Parties at all its 5th meeting. As per our yesterday's statement, Tanzania has enormous number of SGM in the country. The activities of the SGM are the most significant drivers of loss of biodiversity, land, and forest degradation due to overdependence on timber for mining activities and charcoal for fuel. To address the above challenges, a number of initiatives has been put in place, including establishment and implementation of policies and legislation targeted on combating land degradation and the loss of biodiversity. Madam President, Tanzania therefore emphasizes on synergies of Minamata Convention issues, particularly implementation of Article 7 into the established Global Biodiversity Fund and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, with a view to advance implementation of Article 7 in the context of regional coordinated programs that disseminate best available technologies that addresses the loss of biodiversity in the SGM sector. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Tanzania. Next on my list, Turkey, followed by Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam President. Turkey would like to congratulate and thank the Secretariat for the excellent work done under this agenda item. We appreciate the detailed study presented as Annex 2, mapping the interlinkages between the Kunming-Montreal Global Diversity Framework and the implementation of the Minamata Convention. Such a correlation would be beneficial not only in terms of providing a very well-established framework for integrating mercury action and biodiversity preservation, but also in terms of providing opportunities for the facilitation of Minamata Convention, particularly with regards to creating and using of financial resources in a mutually supportive manner. In this context, We support the draft decision, and we appreciate the efforts of the Secretariat in sustaining its close cooperation with the Convention on Biological Diversity, Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the Ramsar Convention, and others. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Turkey. Indonesia, followed by Canada.
Thank you, Madam President. Indonesia exceedingly appreciates the Secretariat's effort to establish coordinations and collaborations with the Convention on Biological Diversity by integrating the implementations of the Minamata Conventions with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, as it was mandated during the 15th Conference of Parties on the Biodiversity of States Parties to prepare a new in BSAP. Those are in line with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Frameworks. Indonesia has an honor to fulfill such obligations, and for this purpose has prepared a draft of Indonesian Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, which included a target related to the implementation of these conventions, namely reducing pollution and negative impact of pollution to levels that are not harmful to biodiversity and ecosystem functions. The said target would be achieved through a control of wastewater pollution as well as control of an emergency events resulting from hazardous waste and or hazardous and toxic material. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. It was just they told me that we have only 10 extra minutes after 1, so basically we have 12 more minutes. So I would like to close the list now of the parties that will have an intervention and give the floor to Canada, Chile, and Botswana. And after that, if they are very brief in terms of time, we can take the observers. We have 4 on the list already. So with this in mind, next on my list is Canada, followed by Chile.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. Canada was pleased to contribute to the adoption of a new global biodiversity framework. In Montreal, at the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity in Montreal in December 2022. Action on biodiversity can't occur in isolation. The triple planetary crises of biodiversity loss, pollution, and climate change must be addressed in a holistic manner. To that end, Canada thanks the Secretariat for its report documenting linkages between the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the Minamata Convention and its identification of opportunities for both initiatives in a mutually beneficial manner. We note that Target 7 of the framework provides the most direct link between actions to reduce pollution and their impact on biodiversity. Canada supports the inclusion of additional indicators under Target 7 related to highly hazardous chemicals and mercury. Well, nevertheless, we suggest the invitation paragraph 5 of the draft decision should be extended to the CBD rather than an ad hoc expert group. Also, Canada is of the view that in order to present additional indicators as a component or complementary indicators, rather than calling for a new headline indicator, that would be more consistent with the outcomes of CBD COP15 and the mandate of the technical expert group. Canada is considering opportunities in its own turn, to incorporate in our domestic implementation plan and monitoring framework additional Target 7 complementary or domestic indicators for mercury and highly hazardous chemicals. We encourage other parties to the Minamata Convention who are in the process of developing their national biodiversity strategies and action plans to do the same. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Canada, Chile, and followed by Botswana.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Madam President. Let me begin by saying how grateful we are to the Secretariat for the presentation of this agenda item and the compilation of data and the analysis it has provided so as to facilitate the joint implementation of the Minamata Convention and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. After an exhaustive analysis, Chile can fully support the recommendations proposed. We appreciate the efforts made thus far, and it's our hope that the enthusiasm of these recommendations will be reflected in concrete steps. We are convinced that the implementation will strengthen cooperation among states and will significantly contribute to the coherence between the measures related to biodiversity and mercury. We hope that these measures will not only be approved, but will be efficiently and effectively implemented so that our efforts can be guided towards identifying specific targeted measures and defining indicators that can be addressed through a future roadmap or action plan. We are committed to actively collaborating in this convention to achieve our goals and to ensure a more sustainable future, one of respect for our planet. Thank you, Madam President.
Botswana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Botswana appreciates the report prepared by the Secretariat on linkages between the Minamata Convention and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The report has been helpful in unpacking the linkages and guiding on areas for parties to prioritize. Madam President, Botswana have just received funding from the Global Environment Facility to update her National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan and align it to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, noting that mercury and other chemicals pollution are direct drivers of biodiversity loss. And in line with the report from the Secretariat, Botswana will integrate the mercury pollution issues into the strategy and action plan. This will enhance an integrated approach to implementation, monitoring, and resource mobilization. As Botswana updates her biodiversity strategy and action plan, we will submit the draft final report to the Secretariat for peer reviewing towards ensuring that it has integrated issues of mercury pollution. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Botswana. This concludes the list of parties. Moving on to observers, I'm giving the floor to Kenya, followed by Libya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kenya takes note of COP15 to UN CBD Decision 15/4 on the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework with its 4 goals and 23 targets. Target 7 seeks to reduce pollution risks and the negative impact of pollution from all sources by 2030. We acknowledge the importance and urgency to reduce the impacts of chemical pollution on biodiversity and environment. Kenya notes the need for parties as they align their national biodiversity strategy and action plans, including developing national targets and implementation frameworks for the KMGBF to make efforts to disaggregate pollution sources by specific streams, their potential environmental impacts, including specific contribution to biodiversity loss, especially mercury pollution. The national targets that will be aligned to Target 7 must outline specific pollution streams, chemicals, including mercury, with an aim to reduce pollution risks and the negative impacts from all sources, ensuring that all sources are accounted for and including on how they impact the environment, biodiversity, and appropriate mitigation interventions are implemented. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Kenya. Next on my list, I have UNEP. Sorry, seems like Libya came back. Just, could you be, okay, more precise? Now I have Libya. It's very tight, the time is very tight, but you have the floor, so please.
الرئيس والأمانة التي تشرف على هذا المؤتمر كما نشكر حكومة سويسرا على هذه الاستضافة.
Thank you very much for the organization of this meeting. Thank you to Switzerland for their warm welcome. Greetings from the Libyan people, our steadfast and resilient people who have faced many adversities, including climate change. And as you all are aware, we suffered from the consequences of climate change in the latest storm, latest hurricane. So we support this framework and are counting on your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Libya. Now I'm going to move on to UNEP. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The United Nations Environment Programme thanks you for the opportunity to present its work on the potential areas of collaboration and cooperation in the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the Chemicals and Waste Cluster of MEAs. The Chemicals and Waste Cluster encompasses a number of MEAs as well as other binding and voluntary instruments and initiatives related to safeguarding human and planetary health from hazardous chemicals and waste, including the recently adopted Global Framework on Chemicals. Increasing efficiencies and effectiveness in the implementation of MEAs through strengthening cooperation and identifying potential synergies in implementation have already been significant consideration in international fora. However, efforts have been often focused on cooperation and collaboration within the same thematic cluster. Nonetheless, within both the chemicals and waste and biodiversity clusters, there are common interests in reducing the impacts of anthropogenic activities on nature and achieving effective delivery of the 2030 Agenda and its SDGs. This includes SDG 12.4 on environmentally sound management of chemicals and waste. So it's important for us to strengthen overall complementarities and building on mutual support and convergence of the respective mandates, which could enhance the implementation and delivery of instruments from both clusters. This has been increasingly addressed and considered by relevant initiatives and by the governing bodies of MEAs from the Chemical, Waste and Biodiversity Conventions. For instance, mercury deriving from or used in mining activities, including artisanal small-scale gold mining, can lead to the contamination of soils, streams, and rivers. Similarly, pesticides used in agriculture threaten bird life and lead to a decline in bird and pollinator populations. Madam President, it's relevant to underscore that UNEP's medium-term strategy outlines several activities to enhance programmatic cooperation with the secretariats and governing bodies of 15 MEAs that it administers. I will try to give you a few examples. But let me say first that under this mandate, UNEP has only been providing substantive input to the development of the GBF and the global chemicals frameworks, but has also convened meetings and workshops for sharing experience and information. Most recently, in August this year, we organized, in collaboration with the government of Rwanda and the MEA secretariats, a capacity building workshop for national focal points of MEAs and Montevideo Program 5 of selected SADC countries to facilitate implementation of biodiversity and chemicals and waste MEAs, which took place with financial support of the government of Finland and the Swedish International Development Agency. 4 key messages came out of this workshop: establishing national mechanisms, committees, or similar bodies to facilitate cooperation and collaboration between focal points from different thematic clusters, bringing national focal points together to develop cross-thematic project proposals, creating joint national legislative guidelines on different cross-cutting aspects related to biodiversity protection and sound management of chemicals and waste, building on the existing tools at the regional and international level, and last, promoting common monitoring efforts between the chemicals and waste and biodiversity clusters to support and facilitate reporting, including through Target 7 on the Kunming-Montreal GBF. Madam President, UNEP's work has been done in close collaboration with the Minamata Convention Secretariat, as well as secretariats of BRS and CBD conventions. Our joint efforts led to tabling a resolution during the ICCM5 on which key elements have been adopted under the international cooperation and coordination. This formed part of the package of resolutions adopted together with the Global Framework on Chemicals in Bonn last month. I thank you for giving us the floor, Madam President.
Thank you very much, UNEP. Now I have the last two organizations on my list, and I would like to give the floors to IPEN, followed by International Union for Conservation of Nature. So IPEN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for the Secretariat for preparing the document. Many IPEN participating organizations are located in biodiversity-rich and sensitive ecosystem countries. Once mercury released into the atmosphere, mercury's transport and fate are complex as its cycle between media, with legacy mercury continuing to cycle for decades to centuries. Therefore, IPEN supports the recommendation proposed in the draft resolution on Mercury and Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Promoting the integration of mercury and biodiversity-related priorities complements the implementation of Minamata Convention. The Minamata Convention and Kunming-Montreal Kunming-Montreal GBF have the potential to be mutually supportive and generate co-benefits. These co-benefits, as suggested by several parties, could be reflected by including mercury in the headline indicators of Target 7. Mainstreaming biodiversity and mercury control measures can also be done to integrate them into coherent policy and implementations of Minamata Convention in the country's NIP or SGM NAP. Moreover, monitoring of the impact of mercury on biodiversity and ecosystem services need to be strengthened, especially by sharing data and information related to biota and abiota. It is imperative that prior and informed consent procedures must be upheld when engaging indigenous peoples. Capacity building is needed to assist biodiversity-rich countries in mapping mercury risk from multiple inputs and ecosystem sensitivity that reflects how much available mercury will be converted into its more toxic and bioavailable form. The Minamata tragedy taught us that restoring degraded land and water bodies from mercury pollution will be a challenging task for every country, especially for developing countries. The cost of our biodiversity and ecosystem restorations show a clear message about the price of mercury pollution, especially from SGM activities. More research and knowledge development are needed, including exploring traditional and indigenous knowledge to find locally based solutions. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, IPEN. And last, IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Thank you so much for this report and also the way forward. IUCN supports this very much. Not later than in 2021, IUCN members at their Congress adopted a resolution calling for urgent action to reduce the impacts of the mining industry on biodiversity. This mandate, or this mandate in mind, IUCN stands ready to support the Secretariat and also the governments to implement the further actions related to this report through our projects, but also through our scientific data and evidence, for example, through the action plan that you are drafting, but also in the monitoring issue. And we are happy to support you in this endeavor. Just a last call, we want also to echo the indigenous people organizations. It will be crucial to include them, not only considering their interests, but include indigenous people and women in the implementation of the further work to be in synergies with the Global Biodiversity Framework goals and targets. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, IUCN. And this concludes the plenary deliberation for this morning. We will continue with this agenda item in the afternoon plenary. Just a kind reminder that I would like to let you know that CRP4, the draft decision on the review of the financial mechanism, is now available on the website. This meeting is adjourned and will resume at 3 p.m. Thank you so much.